Hello and happy Tuesday out there. No, I am the hairless version of Johnny Marks, who normally has a great coiffed and beard going, but I am the opposite. Jamie Lynchin here today with Tyler Zulli. Tyler, the Jon Marks Show is presented as always by
our friends over at Bet Parks. Get in on the Bet Parks app. Birds 4.5-point favorites over the Packers in this one. Of course, you play for fun. You love the win. You bet at Bet Parks.
So I would like some credit on Sunday in the Eagles post-game show.
Okay.
I was proven wrong in the moment, but proven right after 48 hours, Tyler. Now, Bo Wolf did the guess that line with me and said, what do you think? Because I was looking early in the show. I was looking for the early Eagles-Packers line to be out just to kind of gauge how the bookmakers are viewing this one. It always tells you maybe a little something. A lot of the times it tells you nothing. And Bo said, what do you think the line is? I said, I'm going with Eagles minus 4.5. Fran went a little lower. I think he went either 3 or 3.5. He might have nailed it right on the nose. And Bo tells me it's 3.5. And I was like, oh, man, that seems right. But like, I would have thought the Eagles would have gotten a little bit more love than the 3-point home favorite. And sure enough, 48 hours later, the books self-correct, and it falls in at 4.5. So basically, I'm raising this point to say I was right all along.
Yeah, I think that, I'm a big believer in old school journalism, and old school journalism says it's better to be right than it is to be first, right?
Damn
And
right.
So you were right eventually.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty fair line. Like you and I were in a group chat with some buddies, and we were talking about the line, and I think people maybe overreacted a little bit to the 3.5 because the reality is it's two playoff teams, right? It's two good teams. The Eagles are the better team, and Vegas said we think they're the better team by a margin. And then I think a lot of money probably came in on the Eagles over the last 24 hours, and they said,
people are like, "Ooh, give me that."
Yeah, we got to course correct to 4.5, and then it got to 5, and then it got back to 4.5. What that tells me is that it's the playoffs, right? And that's two playoff teams.
Yeah, so if any bookmakers want to get in touch with me, at J.E. Lynch Jr. on Twitter, my email's in there as well. I can just give you the opening lines if you guys want to consult with me first.
Jamie is about to take the nation.
But I did want to start today talking about the Birds because I'm fired up. Look, last week doing the PHLY Eagles show, you had to manufacture some excitement for that game. It was meaningless. It was basically a week off before the real season starts. And this Eagles season is going to be entirely judged not by the previous 18 weeks, Tyler. It's going to be judged on how they perform, hopefully more than this weekend. But there's a reality where the season could end on Sunday. They're going to be judged. Nick Sirianni is going to be judged. And I fully believe the Jeremy Fowler rumor mill that, Nick Sirianni could find himself on a cutting block if they were to lose this weekend. But they're going to be judged on how they perform this weekend and how they perform hosting the next round. And I'm really confident. I feel great about this team. I almost shifted. I did shift, actually, to wanting the Packers more than I did the Washington Commanders. Because, look, I know how Jordan Love performed last year in the playoffs. He looked spectacular. I haven't seen that Jordan Love this year when I've watched the Packers. I see a guy who's not as confident. He's throwing off his back foot a little bit too much. We'll get into the Christian Watson thing. That really hurts him. The Packers are a good team. Defensively, offensively, running game, all that. I respect the hell out of them. But something about Jaden Daniels terrifies me. I think that guy's going to be a problem for a long time for the NFC East. And the divisional opponent, the seeing a team for a third time in a season, all that stuff I didn't love. So I wanted the Packers, and I feel really good heading into this weekend. Supremely confident, as a matter of fact, which is starting to scare me a little bit because, hubris, you fly too close to the sun and your wings are going to burn off. But I like the Eagles a lot this weekend. I think there's a possibility they could make this not that close of a game. I don't want to say blowout, but I see a scenario where the Eagles could handle this by 10 points. I think Jalen Hurts is going to be fine. The earliest we'll have information on him is Wednesday of this week when practice resumes because he has to get through a practice to clear protocol. And it appears I think shout out to Bo on Sunday said, yeah, we probably won't hear anything till Wednesday, but Monday, there's a good chance one of the national reporters will leak a little something. And Tyler, last night, Mike Garafolo, not reported, but said on NFL Network, and I think Jalen Hurts is going to be good to go on Wednesday. To me, that was all I needed to hear. Nothing to worry about. I feel great going into the game. How are you feeling about the Packers matchup?
Yeah, so John and I talked about the Packers' identity a little bit yesterday, and I'll break down, just like this is why I think watching the games and scoreboard watching are two very, very different things. And it's why I always found it very difficult for national pundits to talk about everything because there's just no way that you watch every game. Like we watch locally, we watch the big games, we watch the tape to catch up on these games. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I watched every Packers game. I've watched a good amount of Packers games, and I caught up on what I need. But it's why I think when you look at the box score versus when you look at the eye test, you may see two different things because Jordan Love missed 3 games this year due to injury earlier in the season.
Real quick, before you continue on, I saw an article last night that said, are the Packers better with Malik Willis?
Oh,
I didn't read it. I just saw the headline. I was just like, what? Okay.
Did this get written by are there Philly fans in Green Bay?
Yeah.
So here's Jordan Love's season total. 63% completion percentage, 3,300, just almost 3,400 yards, 25 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 96.7 quarterback rating. You look at those numbers and you go, not a bad year, especially for a guy who missed 3 weeks. Like he probably, if you extrapolate the numbers that he had over the course of the year, he probably gets close to the 4,000 yard mark. Maybe he gets over 30 touchdowns. Completion percentage, interceptions, those things could vary as well. But you look at it and you go, it's not a terrible year. But if you were to ask Packers fans on Twitter, I literally just Twitter searched Jordan Love before the show started just to get the feel of what like the Packers fans are saying. Vibes are low, worries about his mechanics, worries about decision-making. And it's for a guy who, by the way, up until last week when he didn't play a whole lot, had the best QBR in football since week 12. So from week 12 to week 17, had the best QBR in the league. Now, QBR can be, interpreted in a couple different ways because if you look at his numbers, like he wasn't throwing for a ton of yards. He was protecting the football. He hasn't thrown an interception since week 12, which coincides with the QBR rating against the Bears. He hasn't fumbled the football since the week before against the Lions. So he's gone 7 consecutive weeks without a turnover, even if you include last week's game against the Bears, but he didn't play a whole lot. So, like, numerically speaking, he's had a decent year, but there doesn't feel like there's a lot of confidence surrounding Jordan Love from the Packers community heading into this game.
Yeah, and I kind of, just as you said, not watching every single Packers game, but when I do watch, and I don't know, I'm not as intimidated. When I compare Jordan Love and Jaden Daniels side by side, I go, ooh, Jaden Daniels kind of sends a little bit of a shiver down my spine. Jordan Love, I could eat these words come Sunday, doesn't right now. And a lot of times playoff football, of course, there's 51 other X factors and variables that go into the outcome of the game. But sometimes it's as simple as, does that quarterback frighten me? And Jordan Love, look, I know he's done it in the past and he can do it again. I like Jordan Love as a quarterback overall, but right now he doesn't frighten me. Jaden Daniels frightens me. So I got the matchup I wanted, and I feel good about it.
Well, I think that there has to be a separation between like this guy is a playoff performer over a bulk of years versus this guy performed extremely well in the postseason last year, and I'm worried about it this year. Like Jordan Love was excellent in the postseason last year. Yeah. Crushed the Cowboys. Probably should have beaten San Francisco. Ends up losing that game. The Packers end up losing that game, but probably should have beaten San Francisco with an opportunity to go to the NFC Championship game against the Lions last season. Obviously, it's hindsight's 2020, but like that Jordan Love last year was coming into the postseason playing well. His last couple of weeks of the regular season were excellent, and then he parlayed that into a really nice playoff run. I'm not going to say that he can't flip a switch because we've seen Jordan Love play at a high level, especially in games that mattered. And it like wouldn't stun me if Jordan Love plays well on Sunday. But I think a couple of factors play into it. This is not the same feel to the Packers as they had last year going into the playoffs, even though they won 2 more games this season than they did last year. And Jordan Love missed 3 weeks, to reiterate that point. They won 2 more games with your starting quarterback missing 3 weeks. It's an impressive feat. Their run defense is really, really good. Their rushing game is really, really good. Josh Jacobs has been awesome for them. And I think at one point had scored a touchdown in 7 consecutive weeks on the ground. So, like, their formula is simplistic, but it works. But I will say this, I don't have the same feel about the Packers heading into this year's playoff run as I did to last year's playoff run. Thinking about, like, a worry level. I don't carry that sentiment into this year.
I had, I was doing the notes last night, and I was like, man, what a difference a year makes. I was getting ready to do the pre and post game with Bo Wolf last year, and I was like, just get this over with. This is a loss. This is bad.
Oh, it felt evident that they were going to lose that game to the Bucs. Now, I didn't think they'd lose by a billion or what felt like a billion, but it felt pretty imminent that they were going to lose that game to the Bucs last year. This team feels like it's again, this all hinges on Jalen Hurts playing, I think, but this team feels like it's in a much better place than it was a season ago.
Yeah, I mean, credit to Howie Roseman in the front office, because last year, hello, kitty. The cats love blinds. Last year, the secondary, and Chris Slemmer in the chat just said, I'm really curious to see how the Eagles DBs do against the Packers wide receivers. Christian Watson is a huge blow for the Packers to lose there. But going back to last year, I mean, James Bradbury was starting. Reed Blankenship was injured in a Week 18 game. You were a sieve defensively on the back half, and now you look at where the Eagles are, and like their backups went out last week and handled the Giants. So their starters, where this defense has come from a year ago to now, is really remarkable. But you mentioned Jalen Hurts, and you said, you kept saying Jordan Love missed 3 weeks. Jalen Hurts, unfortunately, missed the last 3 weeks of the season. Now, it wasn't a full 3 weeks. He did play a quarter of the Commanders game before getting hurt. But I filled in for Anthony last week and got to catch up with my man Baldy. Oh, Baldy.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. And on Thursday, and look, I got called a concussion uncle in our Discord. I brought that up last week because I said, oh, man, I'd really love to see Hurts, play a quarter or a half and not have his first professional football game in a month happen in the first round of the playoffs. And people were like, he's a vet, he's this. I'm like, it's not about that. It's about cadence. It's about timing. It's about rhythm. And to miss a month leading into the playoffs, I do think is a little bit of a detriment. Now I think Hurts should be fine, but the fact that he hasn't played meaningful football in a month does suck a little bit. I'm not going to sugarcoat that one.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you. I think, when your starting quarterback misses any sort of substantial time, rhythm and cadence and things like that do come into question a little bit. But I think that this team is so well balanced that they have battled through slow starts all year, for the most part over the, in the last couple of weeks, notwithstanding, because their offense has moved the football effectively. They moved the football effectively against Washington until Jalen Hurts got injured. They moved the football effectively against Dallas, even with Kenny Pickett looked really, really good. Tanner McKee moved the ball effectively on his opening drive.
Mormon missile.
So I think that, you look at it a little bit differently in the last couple of weeks, but this team has sustained success even if they do have slow starts.
Saquon!
I think you lean heavily on Saquon. I think you lean heavily on A.J. Brown. I think you lean heavily on Devontae Smith. I would not be surprised to see a lot of timing routes. I know that that's not exactly their offense all the time with Jalen Hurts at quarterback, but I would imagine less design runs in the beginning of the game. I would imagine more, slants, drags, curls, hooks, those kind of stuff, timing routes to get that feel back, right? On the first couple of drives. You might see an efficient drive that, goes 40 yards and it takes 10 plays to do it. I'm just making up a number, right? Because
just to get him in that rhythm.
Trying to get a little bit of a flow back, right? So there's of course there's like a, hey, will he be rusty concern? But I also think that they have so many good skill position players and their offensive line is so good that I feel comfortable with an ease, even if it is a playoff game, allowing him to ease himself back into a little bit of a flow.
Yeah, and Baldy's point, and if you're a, I don't know, first quarter gambler out there, because they do have quarter lines and all of that, Frank Mick in the chat says, I mean, we're guaranteed a 0-point first quarter. This is the way for that squad. 2 points on that. One, they're committed to the bit. That was their deal all year long. And two, that was kind of Baldy's point about that rust is, in the playoffs, slow starts can be different than the regular season.
Sure.
And, I think they'll be okay ultimately, but you don't want to get out of the gate slow in the playoffs, especially at home. So I probably would tend to agree with Frank that there might be a meaningless, scoreless first quarter coming, but ultimately still feel really good.
Well, I think if that's the case, then again, you rely on your skill position players and you rely on your defense that was the number one ranked defense in football.
Oh, we're getting into that stat porn.
I think you rely upon Zack Baun. You rely upon Jalen Carter. You rely upon Quinyon Mitchell. You rely upon Darius Slay and Cooper DeJean. Yesterday, John and I talked about this Green Bay wide receiver group, and that's the group that last year everybody went, wow, man, they have 4 pretty good receivers, right? Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, just a bunch of guys who were good. I wouldn't say they had a true number one at the time, but a bunch of dudes who were really good. I think Jaden Reed has emerged as their number one receiver, but I'm not sure how much of a number one is he. He had 55 catches this year, led the team in receptions, 857 yards. They spread the ball evenly, right? Reed with 55, Kraft, their tight end, with 50. Watson in 15 games, 29 catches. Romeo Dobbs, 46. Dontavian Wicks, 39. Josh Jacobs out of the backfield, 36. They spread the ball evenly and they distributed amongst all their playmakers. But I feel like this secondary could play to a standard that we expect them to play. A, because it's a very good secondary, and B, because it's a receiving group sans Christian Watson now that I don't think strikes a ton of fear. If I were to be worried about one player on this offense, I think it's pretty obvious. It's Josh Jacobs.
Yeah. Yeah. Josh Jacobs, another one of the offseason free agent acquisitions of the running back group that's paying large dividends for their team. But you mentioned it, the defense, and we'll talk about them and then take a quick break to tell you about our friends here. The defense is probably why I feel as optimistic as I did. Now, the regular season is over, and where did the Eagles finish ultimately as a defensive group? Number 1 overall. Huge credit to Vic Fangio. Obviously had some new toys to work with on the secondary, but for the first-year coordinator to take over that disaster between Sean Desai and Matt Patricia last year and right the ship. And look, Jalen Carter is a beast. Defensive line-wise, it's not like the most, awe-inspiring names on paper ever. Nolan Smith has taken a big step this year. Josh Sweat has gotten back to some Josh Sweat-like performances. Jordan Davis, really, really important in the run game, makes the line tough to run against. But the Eagles defense is why I feel great about this. And here's how they finished the year in terms of ranks around the league. So they were the only team in the NFL this year to keep opponents to less than 5,000 yards on the year. And they were nearly 270 yards short of that 5,000 yard mark. The next closest team was 400 plus yards away. So the Eagles defense in terms of allowing yardage was spectacular. Now here's the gamut of how they performed amongst the league. Their 26 takeaways were the 6th best in the NFL. Their 17.8 points per game was the 2nd best in the NFL. They held opponents, and you said Jordan Love was around 63% roughly, Tyler?
63%, yep.
The Eagles on the year held the opposing quarterback to a 62.2% completion percentage, which was the 6th best in the NFL. They had 90 passes defended, which was the 3rd best in the NFL, 42 defensive penalties, which was right smack dab in the middle of the pack. They had a missed tackle percentage of 8.2%, which was middle of the pack. On third down rate, and this is This is a big one for playoff football. Getting off the field on third down is huge. Their third down rate was 35.5%, which was the third best in the NFL. They only allowed 80 big plays, which was the fewest in the league. They forced 22 forced fumbles. And huge shout out to Zack Baun and Nolan Smith. Those two have become punchaholics and cause a lot of fumbles. And then finally, they had 13 interceptions, which was good for 12th best in the league. Hell of a year from this defense. Vic Fangio, I will take a bullet for you. I hope you go nowhere. And the good thing is we'll get to some of the other coordinators in a little bit. Vic Fangio appears settled here. His family is close by. His Phillies are on the TV. I don't think he's pursuing head coaching gigs around the league anymore. He's one of the top 5 highest paid coordinators in the league. I think this is Vic Fangio's retirement gig, and we don't have to worry about losing him, which is really nice.
Well, Jamie, you talked about with Bo the other day, or maybe it was Fran. I forget which one it was when we were filling in for Anthony. You mentioned when you hire good young, assistant coaches, coordinators, like you're expecting these guys to get elevated at some point, whether it's from, defensive backs coach to defensive coordinator or offensive coordinator to head coach. Like the Eagles have cycled through some coordinators over the last couple of years that have gotten head coaching jobs. You can go from Shane Steichen. You can go from Jonathan Gannon, of course, varying levels of success from
Don't say that name.
From the Elevation platform. But I think, you've got a young offensive coordinator who's going to start getting head coaching looks. I believe he got an interview with the
Saints.
Saints it was the other day.
Yeah, a request.
So I think that, when you hire good young coordinators and good young coaches that get elevated and get better jobs, like you can't do anything. Good for them. They deserve an opportunity to succeed at the next level. Vic Fangio is a vet. Vic Fangio is an older coach. I think he's settled into being a defensive coordinator. And as you mentioned, there's an opportunity for familiar with this area. So maybe this is his last stop. He may want to play this thing out, and then he, rides off into the sunset and retires. He needs
NBC Sports Philly for his Phillies, Tyler. He's a huge Phils fan. He loves it here.
So maybe that is the case. So you feel kind of entrenched with your defensive coordinator. Who for really, I think for all intents and purposes, has made this unit the most effective it's been in a long time, right? Taking the chance on Zack Baun and saying, I want that guy. And not only saying I want that guy, but kind of moving him away from where he was playing as a rotational edge rusher to being more of a every down linebacker, and not only being an every down linebacker, but being your green sticker linebacker.
And the first player in NFL history to have over 150 tackles and 5 forced fumbles.
Yeah, it's been an incredible year for him. And the ascension of rookies like Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Jalen Carter's next elevated step from really good to really, really good. Probably Pro Bowler, in fact, right? So what Vic Fangio has helped this defense do, and to his credit, and I'll eat crow on this one because I was worried about if it's Fangio disciples, what's the difference between Fangio disciples and Fangio, right? And he's proven me wrong. It passed the Buccaneers game where they just got boat raced in that game. The Bucs jumped out to a 21-0 lead. It was over very, very quickly. But past that, you lost the game to the Falcons, which you probably could have won, and you lost the game to the Commanders, which, despite the fact that your quarterback missed 3 quarters, you could have won that game too. I mean, you really had an opportunity. Now, you could inversely say they probably should have lost to Carolina because they got outplayed in that game for a majority of it. But, you could theoretically say that this defense has played them into a 14, 15, 16 win team, and they settled at 14. And they're the number 2 seed. They win the division, and it's the number 1 defense in football. Like, what Vic Fangio has done for this team has been incredible.
Yeah, it really is. And, Zach Baun and Fran yesterday on the PHLY Eagles show did a fun little thing towards the end of the show about drafting which, coordinator, sub coaches like Christian Parker, the young 33-year-old, and other coaches, might get interviews elsewhere to become coordinators. So you're going to lose some of that underbelly of Vic Fangio, but Vic Fangio is here for the long run. Kellen Moore, TBD. I'd be surprised if the Saints went with him, but I would imagine one more year here of successful offense. And who knows? New Orleans could grab him, but I would think he's good for one more year here, and if they have success, he could be gone. So that's something to worry about another day. And
I think about some of the offensive coordinators who are probably going to get jobs. Obviously, Ben Johnson's the top.
Ben Johnson, yeah,
he's the top of the list. But I think a lot of the names that have been brought up as of late are a lot of retread coaching hires. And I know we're going to talk about the firings and the hirings.
Oh yeah,
but it feels like it's a lot of names that we've heard already, and then it's some defensive-minded guys as well. So I'd be interested to see where Kellen Moore kind of slots in to that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, when he was with the Cowboys, he was considered the next big hot head coaching candidate and just never really panned out there. What's wild here, and we got to take a quick moment. You said, 14, 15, 16 win team. What's crazy to think about is the Falcons game. Saquon drops a routine ball. And the other game, what's the other loss? The Commanders? One of the other losses had another routine play.
Is it John Dotson?
Maybe. I'm brain farting pretty bad on that. But it's pretty remarkable. I bring it up to just say the Eagles are never out of a game. Even in the games they lost this year, they had chances to win them. So
they got crushed one time.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. All right, let's take a quick moment and tell you about some of our friends here at PHLY. I got a pair of these out in my car, and they are awesome. Shady Rays, the name to know in the sunglass game. Look, and if you're a skier, snowboarder, mountaineer, they got some great goggles out there that'll have you ready for the slopes. Andrew Frazier was raving about them. He's a big boarder, and he was out on the mountain recently with the Shady Rays, and they're the best he's come across, he said. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company offering world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor activities. With hundreds of options to choose from, you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your lifestyle. And they probably have the birds colors for you if you want to wear them this Sunday for the big Birds game. Plus, the best deal in sunglasses. If your shades ever go missing or take an unexpected damage hit, like your kids sit on them or rip them off your face and throw them on the ground, that's happened to me before. Don't sweat it. They will back every pair by their lost or broken replacement plan. And if you don't love your shades, you can exchange them for a new pair, return within 30 days, worry-free, and there's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back with personal and fast support. And exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out the best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com. Use that code PHLY for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people.
Yeah, and I'll play John today. Let's tell you about our friends over at Glad Hair Restoration, because it's not about just restoration with our friends over at Glad. It's about innovation as well, and they're going to walk you through every step of the process. You're feeling like you're thinning up top just a little bit, having some issues with a hairline or whatnot. Glad is going to walk you through every step of the process to tell you if, or maybe you don't need hair restoration surgery just yet, because they're not just going to say, come on in, hair restoration, let's get it over with. They may take you through some other leading edge treatments for prevention and restoration that are not just the surgery. You could think about laser light therapy, some non-invasive TED treatments, which John says he gets, touched up once every year, vitamin supplementation, PRP and stem cell restoration as well. But if they do determine it's time for your restoration surgery, every patient is going to receive a complimentary one-on-one consultation to pinpoint exactly the way that they're going to go about it. Listen, bald's now optional. If you want to improve how you look and how you feel about yourself, Glad Hair has the right treatment for you. They're going to help you regain your confidence. So how are you going to start? You're going to visit gladhairmctr.com or call 610-980-4000 to get started with our friends over at Glad.
Yes, and thank you to the chat, Tate Jeffries and LK and ribs for lunch. Ooh, I could go for some ribs for lunch. It was the Devontae Smith drop against the Commanders.
Yes, correct.
I mean, like you very realistically could have been a 16-1 team this year. Like very realistically, not like, oh, this or that. Literally game plays at the ends of games that decided W's and L's.
And I will say this, the Falcons won. Now we're going all the way back to September. It feels like it was 7 years ago.
Man, I felt so bad for Saquon when that happened.
Listen, the Falcons one, you can say the drop pass, sure. The defense didn't play well in that game. I think they only gave up like 22 or 25 points in that game, and it might as well have been a billion because it just felt like they couldn't get off the field. They couldn't get a stop when they needed to, and then they give up a touchdown or a score late in the game to end the game. So that Falcons game was really where I was kind of pissed off at Fangio because it just felt like it was a here we go again type of moment where it was like, all right, well, it's another defensive coordinator who's running a similar style scheme. And
they were missing tackles on the regular.
Tackles. And that game really, really perturbed me. And then they win the Saints game the way that they did with good defense and run the ball. And we go, okay, wait, hold on. Here we go. That was a performance. And then they get blown out by Tampa Bay. They're 2-2. And you go, what are we doing here? What's this defense go? What's the game plan for this defense? They rattle off 10 straight wins. The defense is excellent. It ends up being the number one defense in football. And all is forgiven. So, I think that these things balance themselves out because, like,
sure.
Our ribs for lunch, as you said, you got to count the Leggett drop too, right? And as we said, they probably should have.
Xavier Leggett stinks. Saquon Barkley and Devontae Smith don't.
Not disagreeing that they're better players than Leggett, but what I'm saying is, like,
no, I hear you.
These things balance themselves out through the year. So to settle at 14 wins, it's a pretty darn impressive season.
Did you see Xavier Leggett brought raccoon for the media and to the locker room?
Really?
So he is like as Southern as you can get. I'm obsessed with his accent. It's hilarious to listen to. Like, he has got the Southern twang to him, like, so hard. And before Thanksgiving, the media was like, "Oh, what do you do for Thanksgiving and all that?" And he was like, "Yeah, we don't really do turkey. We do like raccoon." And he went through like the list of what him and his cousins cook, and people thought he was joking. He's like, "No, we eat raccoon." And he brought some in like 3 or 4 weeks later for the media and had it in a Tupperware jar with like plastic forks and was like, "Come on, try it." And some of the media tried it and were like, "Yeah, you're right. It's not that bad."
Do you think it's good?
I
can't say I've ever
probably,
had it.
Yeah, it's probably gamey. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't think I want to try it. But good for him. But anyway, by the way, on that play, I thought that was a really hard play, especially for a rookie to make. It was like a leaping, diving grab. Everybody talked about that play after the game, like, "Oh, well, if he catches it." I was like, that was a really hard play to make.
Yeah, I think what people more were considering in the scope of that game.
It was there for the taking, yeah.
Right. Adam Thielen was dicing them up on third downs. It was like, it was funny. It was the one game of the year where, and teams have these type of games where you just don't bring it. You're playing a bad team. It's 1:00. It's home. You're comfortable. And you just don't bring it, right? And so that's all that game was get out of there with a win and move on, right? But in that particular game, it was like I was sitting on my couch and I'm like, all right, well, this is the route Thielen's going to run. And he would run, he'd run a dig or he'd run a slant or a post over the middle. And it was like, oh, that's Adam Thielen. He's just been a great route runner his entire career. But it was one of those games where they end up winning the game because they're the better team. And you flush it and you move on, right? Yeah. And over the course of the year, lesser teams lose that game. Teams that are good, like if the Eagles were good this year, I have a feeling they lose that game. But the Eagles have been great for most of the year. And they win that game because they're the better team and they're superiorly talented. And they had some things go their way. And so when you talk about the construct of the season, yes, you're going to have games that you regret and you wish you could have back. But you're also going to have games like Carolina where you walk out with a win when you didn't play your best football. They probably played like a C+ game that day and walked out with a win.
Yeah. And Dave Dewar mentioned something in the chat. It'll serve as our transition point to the NFL general talk that happened yesterday. And he raises the point that Jerry Jones, did you see what the BS he pulled?
Yeah.
That just doesn't go a long way in a locker room. So Cooper Rush had an incentive. Week 18 is, I guess, become known as player incentive weekend in the NFL. And I threw in a long shot parlay with like 6 of the player incentives. One of the 6 hit because the books protected. Mike Evans needed 87.5 yards to get his bonus, and
90.
almost all the books protected it by saying over under 90 yards, and he gets 89 on the day. So that one didn't hit. Cortland Sutton didn't hit. Kyler Murray rushing touchdown and yardage didn't hit. And there was another one I played. The only one that hit, or actually Cortland Sutton was the only one that did hit of like the 6 or 7. But Cooper Rush, the Cowboys quarterback, had an incentive where if he played one more game, he would have gotten a $500,000 bonus from the Cowboys, and they went out. Now, hopefully they'll do the right thing and give him his bonus anyway, because I do understand wanting to get a look at Trey Lance before he becomes a free agent. You did trade for him. You did bring him in as a highly drafted quarterback. It's pretty clear at this point he can't play if he's getting beat out by Cooper Rush. So hopefully the Cowboys do the right thing and give Cooper his bonus anyway, because I do understand them wanting to get a look at Trey Lance. But if they don't pay him, that does not go over well in the locker room.
Yeah, so I believe the money moniker was $250 if he plays, and then $250 if he gets
if they win.
Snap count. So
snap count, yeah.
I think he needed like 75 snaps, which I don't believe that they were going to get to. But so let's call it what it is. If we're being honest, John and I talked about this yesterday a little bit. It's bad, first and foremost. Second of all, they started Trey Lance because they wanted to lose.
Yeah, there's that. And I'm sure they wanted to look at him a little bit. I think they know their answer.
Sure. He's not.
What did they trade for him? Wasn't it like a 3rd or 4th rounder?
No, I don't think it was that.
Look it up.
I think it was.
It was something substantial, wasn't it?
Anyway, like the Cowboys will now pick 12th. I think if they would have lost that game, I think they could have fallen to as low as 16th.
Cowboys sent a 4th round pick to the 49ers.
If they would have ended up winning that game. If they would have won that game, I think they could have fallen to as low as 16th. So I think, let's call it for what it is. They realized that Cooper Rush probably gave them a better chance to win the game than Trey Lance.
Absolutely.
And so that was probably the thought process. That's the one that it's hard to sell because you can't say we're tanking, because then you get in league trouble, and then your players don't like that either. But I think everybody understands kind of what the writing on the wall was in that particular instance. So my thing is, just pay Cooper Rush and then say we're
$250K,
and then say we're starting Trey Lance. That's the way you go about this.
And as Dave Dewar says in the chat, the Cowboys never do the right thing, and it does seem like Zeke Elliott goes to the Chargers now. I was really hoping Calais Campbell was released and had a chance to sign with the Eagles because he said he wanted to basically ring chase a little bit. That man is a monster. I would have loved him here. But Ezekiel Elliott gets freed by the Cowboys and goes to the Chargers, which I find a little weird. It's like fantasy football dropping somebody before the playoffs so your buddy can grab them. It feels
that running back room is like
J.K. Dobbins, Ezekiel Elliott.
Misfit toys. Like, it's just dudes who have been cast off because of injuries.
They should go grab Maurice Clarett and bring him out of retirement. Yeah, get another Ohio State back in there.
It's guys who have had significant injuries, and then a young guy in Kamani Vidal. And then they add Zeke to the fold, who is beyond cooked.
I love the agent Twitter, language from all these national guys. Like, well, Zeke Elliott is going to bring years of playoff experience and veteran leadership to that running back room.
Can't play anymore.
He's cooked. It's a pointless move. But there was a lot of moves around the NFL yesterday. Some of them, frankly, embarrassing. We'll get to that one in New England. But let's first start with our man, Dougie P. I will never say a bad word about that man. He was balls to the walls, rock and roll, hardcore metal all day, and I'll forever love that man. That's a bad situation down in Jacksonville. Now, the messed up part of why the Jaguars are just getting dragged and roasted around the NFL is GM Trent Baalke is about to hire his 3rd head coach. Now, while Howie Roseman did it, there was the Chip Kelly funkiness, some uncertainty of who was actually the front office in the beginning of his tenure. Not many GMs get to hire 3 NFL head coaches. Trent Baalke has been really bad with some individual talent that's decent, but team construction-wise in totality, quite bad. He keeps his job while Dougie P gets canned. I feel bad for Doug, but that's a terrible situation to be in. Really embarrassing. You kept Balky on top of it.
Yeah, it's a mess because, quite frankly, their roster is not particularly good. They have some top end talent. Drafting Brian Thomas Jr. was
he's a stud.
They have some top end talent, but their roster overall is not particularly strong. Like you said, GMs tend to not get this many chances to hire a head coach. And the weirder situation is, so Shad Khan, the owner of the Jags, backed Balky yesterday by keeping him, right? And saying that this is going to be our guy. Well, apparently he did an interview either late yesterday, I guess, or maybe it surfaced this morning or whatever the case may be, where basically he said he would think about removing Balky as the GM if a prospective head coach gave him a credible reason. So, like, if a head coach they wanted,
Bill Belichick, you're talking about?
Hey, somebody of that kind of ilk said, hey, I don't want this guy, and here's the reasons why. Take a look at his hiring track record. They would consider moving on from Balky after he gave him the vote of confidence, because it's not just in Jacksonville that Balky has struggled. I think was he in San Francisco as well?
Yeah, I believe so.
And the coaches that he hired in San Francisco were not very good either. I believe he was the one that hired Chip Kelly. I'll go back and double check.
Yeah, I think you're right. He was right ahead of John Lynch, wasn't he?
So here were his hirings as a GM. Jim Tomsula, who lasted 1 year,
who was a laughing stock of the league.
5-11. Now, Jim Harbaugh was a great hire, 45-19. Excellent, tenure. Chip Kelly went 2-14, out. And then he went to Jacksonville, hires Urban Meyer, which was just a terrible decision on the forefront and got worse over time. And then he hires Doug Peterson, who, was 20-26, was not good. And I'm not going to sit here and say that it was entirely Doug Peterson's fault, but it wasn't helpful either.
He was a Super Bowl coach on the market. So,
it's a really bad the organization right now is in a bad spot. And I wouldn't be surprised if head coaches
just go to London already, Shad.
Like, I wouldn't be shocked if head coaches turn the job down or don't seek the job out, I should say, because of the situation with the GM, with the ownership group, with the roster that's not particularly strong.
They'll always be able to fill it because there's only 32 of those jobs. But like Ben Johnson's probably not fielding the Jacksonville call. You know what I mean? Like, if you have choices, you're not. Hey, Shad, I appreciate you reaching out, but nah. The other big news that happened. Well, actually, two other big news pieces happened. Let's continue talking about those after we tell you about some of our friends here at PHLY.
And that, of course, is our friends over at the BetParx app, BetParx Sportsbook and Casino. It's my casino of choice. It's my sportsbook of choice. Why? Not just because it's right around the corner for me, but because you can get all of the incredible odds, slots, games, table games, and, of course, get in on all of your sports betting action. Whether you want to bet a straight bet, a parlay, a same-game parlay, you can do it all at the BetParx Casino and Sportsbook. Your hometown team, your Birds this weekend, 4.5-point favorites at home as they open up the pro football playoffs over Green Bay. It's been somewhere between 3.5 and 5. Right now it is settled at 4.5. But, of course, you can get in on all the action of pro hoops, pro hockey, college hoops, and not too far away, pro baseball. I know it feels like it's forever away with snow on the ground, but it is there. It is going to be available. And you can, of course, get in now with some of the futures bets. You can decide who's going to win a division, who's going to win the championship, who the award winners are. You can do it all with our friends over at the BetParx Sportsbook and Casino. And for new users, get in on this right now. You can get some of the best action with Parx Online Casino app and Sportsbook. Get up to $1,000 in casino bonus back if you're down in the first 24 hours. Your casino bonus must be wagered. See betparx.com for more details. Must be 21 and in PA, New Jersey, or Michigan. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. You play for fun. You love to win. You bet with BetParx.
And this is something I think I need to take advantage of, and that's with our friends over at TrueMark Financial Credit Union. Look, if you're at the end of the year, it's always expensive. There's the holidays. My wife and I recently took our 10-year anniversary trip, and the credit card bill got a little bit bigger than I was comfortable with. So what do you do in these situations? Well, what if you could pay it off faster and with zero interest until 2026? It's true, because TrueMark Financial is offering a zero interest on balance transfers for 12 months. So all your payments can go towards reducing your balance, not just covering the interest. Transfer your existing balance from another institution to a TrueMark Financial Visa credit card and take advantage of this amazing offer. But hurry, you have until the end of February 28th exactly, 2025 to take advantage of this. So whether you're interested in earning rewards, cash back, or simply prefer a lower rate for everyday purchases, TrueMark Financial can help you choose a credit card that best fits your financial needs. Visit TrueMark.com/compare for full details to apply today. TrueMark Financial, federally insured by the NCUA, an equal opportunity lender. Terms and conditions apply. All loans subject to approval. 3% balance transfer fee applies. And that is good stuff. I was teaching Tyler about the tricks and trades of the credit card games and rewards and balance transfer. So that's a good one from TrueMark. Might be taking advantage of that one myself. All right, two other big stories in the NFL yesterday, and that was the New England Patriots and the New York Giants. Tyler, choose your poison. Which team do you want to laugh at first?
I mean, I always find it fun to laugh at the Giants. It becomes comical at this point.
Yeah, so yesterday, the New York Giants and John Mara, much like Shad Khan making some strange comments about his GM and quarterback, John Mara comes out yesterday and endorses, and I do that in air quotes for the podcast listeners, head coach Brian Daboll and GM Joe Schoen. Says they're back, but basically I'm running out of patience. They better fix this quick. Now, Brian Daboll, I can see a scenario where you keep him. He got Daniel Jones to the playoffs just a year ago. He's fine as a coach. Like, I don't think he's terrible. I don't think he's great. He's probably like a middle of the pack type of guy. He's fine. I could see a scenario where you go, all right, we gave this guy Daniel Jones for way too long. I want to see him for one more year. Joe Schoen, the Giants have the number 3 pick in the draft. This guy and John Mara, when asked if the roster was better under Joe Schoen, who both guys are going to be entering year 4 of their tenure in New York, John Mara goes, yeah, I don't necessarily know if the roster's better. What? So you're going to give this man the number 3 pick in the draft? Now, look, same thing applies. Maybe John Mara said, hey, we have to check out Daniel Jones for another year or two. And Joe Schoen was powerless in that. What are you doing?
So here's the thing. I don't even necessarily think it's the number 3 pick. I think it's all of the subsequent picks behind that when you do need to build out
top of the second, top of the third, top of the fourth.
You know, that's successful, because here's the thing. I think that I don't know how you feel about this. I think the first 3 picks off the board are going to be in no particular order.
Shador and Travis
Hunter. Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, right? Those are your first 3 picks off the board?
Yeah, I would think so.
To me, you're either going to get your quarterback or let me say a quarterback. I shouldn't say your quarterback, because 2 teams are picking ahead of you. The Titans need a quarterback. The Browns probably do as well.
Should get a quarterback.
Even though they're, cap hamstrung because of the worst contract in the history of the NFL. They're probably needing a quarterback as well. So maybe that says, hey, Travis Hunter falls in our lap. We're just going to take who we perceive to be the best player available. Maybe the number 1 overall prospect in the draft is Travis Hunter, but 2 quarterbacks go first. So the number 3 overall pick doesn't concern me as much if I were a Giants fan as picks 35, as picks 68 or whatever it is, 67, 68. Like picks that you really need to get some viable players with. Last year the Giants got
Neighbors is good.
Neighbors in the first round. He is going to be a stud. He's proven he's a stud. He could win. He could be a good receiver with any quarterback, because he did it with Locke and Cutlets and Daniel Jones and all of these guys. So he's going to be a great receiver. I think one of the players that they selected that prior to his injury this year, and I don't know how he bounces back from injury, I really liked in the draft was Tyler Nubin, the safety from Minnesota. I think Tyler Nubin's going to be a good NFL player too. You're going to need to have another draft where you get probably 2 or 3 bona fide starters. Your first round pick has to be a hit. There's no question about it. But between picks second round and the 4th round, you probably need another 1 or 2 guys who are legit starters. So that to me is where the Giants are going to need to find their success.
This is where I think they're screwing up, though, because you're basically saying, like, you're on a short leash. You got to correct this now. I'm out of time and out of patience. The quarterbacks in the top, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders are far from sure things.
Sure.
Like Shedeur Sanders, some NFL executives are saying they don't even have a first-round grade on him. Cam Ward is a guy that's been up and down between transfers, sometimes looks great, sometimes doesn't. Like, you need to make the long-term best decision for the Giants. And if he feels some sort of pressure to perform this year to keep his job, then he might take somebody that's not in the best long-term interest of the organization. And like the best move the organization could make is possibly making a trade and trading back. Maybe a team is desperate for Cam Ward and you take advantage of them and gain some more equity. That's not helping you in the short term, but the long term, like it's a lame duck GM and a lame duck coach. And I feel like most good organizations don't do that because you need to have the long-term view for the Giants. And I think number 3 is a tricky spot to be in because I think if Travis Hunter's there, it's the obvious safest pick. But if you're forced into picking a quarterback that may or may not be highly graded on your scouts board, that becomes tricky.
So I think that the trade scenario makes a ton of sense, but I also go back to what you just said about running out of time and expectations. If a quarterback's there, if Ward or Sanders doesn't get taken 1 and 2, like let's say the Titans decide we're going to stick with Will Levis another year. We don't particularly love either of these guys. We're going to take Travis Hunter. Or they go an even crazier route and say, we're taking a receiver number 1 overall. We're taking Tet McMillan. We like him that much that that's like.
See the Arizona State kid?
The Arizona receiver. Yeah.
Yeah. Arizona. That's
so like those things could happen. My assumption is it will be Sanders and Ward 1 and 2 in some order. But if it's not, then I think the Giants are going to have to take the quarterback that's left because, like you said, they're running out of time. If both quarterbacks get selected, it opens up actually more avenues for them to take either Travis Hunter or trade out and get a bulk of picks. Like my thinking is there a quarterback who is either heading into free agency that's not going to cost them $1 billion, right? And I'm not talking about a top tier quarterback or somebody that they could end up with like as a bridge quarterback for 1 more season that's better than Drew Lock, that's better than Tommy DeVito, that's better than Daniel Jones. So like my question arises is like if the Falcons do cut Kirk
Cousins, yeah, bring him in.
Does Kirk Cousins make sense on him? Knowing that the Falcons are going to be paying him, he can sign a smaller deal.
Probably
because the Falcons are paying him. Does he make sense for a team like the Giants as their bridge quarterback to wait till next year and say, we like a quarterback in the 2026 draft as opposed to these top 2 guys in the 2025 draft? The other piece of conversation that comes into play is what happens if Penn State wins a couple more games? Does Drew Aller decide he's changing his mind?
So there was a report that said Drew Aller has first-round grades. I was talking to Fran about it on Sunday. A couple teams have first-round grades on Drew Aller. And I was really hoping selfishly that Drew Aller, because he's got the physical tool sets you look for in an NFL quarterback, I was really hoping he fell to like 2nd or 3rd round and he came out and the Eagles could grab him as the developmental guy. That ship has sailed.
There's a reason. There's a reason he announced he's coming back. He wants to be a first-round pick next year. And I think
he'll be able to do so.
With another year, I think he will be a first-round pick next year, assuming he plays well. Because Penn State should be lined up for success next season. The only 2, now I say this, and it's 2 of their most impactful players. The 2 most impactful players they're losing are Abdul Carter and Tyler Warren. Significant, right? Significant.
And both running backs, correct?
No, both will be back.
Oh, they're both coming back. Okay, I saw them in some mocks.
Reportedly, both are coming back.
Okay.
But I think if Vanover can step in and play a fill-in role for the Abdul Carter role, and you have a multitude of tight ends for Tyler Warren replacement instead of like you're playing Moneyball, replacing Tyler Warren in the aggregate. Penn State should be good again next year with Drew Aller back. So I think that he's the wild card in this if he does say, you know what, actually, I just parlayed a semifinal run or a national championship run. I just parlayed that into maybe being a first-round pick.
I would absolutely – yeah, I think he's got a chance to. Tyler, I would absolutely hate to have a top 5 pick this year. I would hate it.
I'm not sure.
It's not – there's like no – Travis Hunter is probably going to be a really good cornerback in the NFL, but then it's like, is he playing wide receiver too? I don't know. It just feels a little funky to me. And then the quarterbacks, like, this is a terrible quarterback class. And teams that are, desperate every year for a quarterback, you kind of tankathon. Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders do like very little for my excitement levels if I'm a fan. And to everybody in the chat, this is a great situation for the New York Giants. I was speaking as if I was a Giants fan and like cheering for them. I'd be like, what are you doing? But yes, we love Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, continue to be there for a long time. But yeah, I would hate to have that top 5 pick this year. Yeah, I would trade out of it so quick.
I think that there's a lot of good players in the draft, and I think the depth is there. I think like you're going to see a multitude
edge and running back. It's really deep, but like really, top really 5 defensive end, quarterback, tackle, where you should spend your top 5 picks. It's pretty weak.
You're going to see a multitude of really good players and starters, I think, get drafted in the 3rd and 4th round this year. But I think, and Fran brought this up, in terms of top-end talent, like
it's bad.
It's not as deep as you would hope. Like there's no – like Tet McMillan is the most slept-on receiver I've ever seen. He's going to be the first true receiver off the board. Travis Hunter, of course, is going to go first, I think. First amongst the people that play receiver. But I think that – like the premier positions that you would normally draft high, tackle, edge rush, quarterback, it's
weak.
I think there's a lot of really good edge rushers in this draft. I don't think there is that dude, that number one, that Aiden Hutchinson type.
Yeah, no. I mean, like, Pierce and Abdul Carter are both projected top 10 or 11, and they're in other years probably going 16 through 22 type of stuff.
Mid-round, right? I think Abdul Carter probably is the first edge off the board. I would think. And then, as you brought up, James Pierce is going to go. Nick Scorton's going to go. There's a lot of talent in this draft, but I don't think it's the elite echelon talent that you're thinking about if you have a top 5 pick. Like teams that are sitting 12, 15, 18, 22, like you're going to get a good player.
Yeah. Yeah. Time is winding down on us, so I want to touch on the New England Patriots. But Habib215 says Washington got really lucky with Daniels. I will say this, not lucky in that they took him, but lucky in that he's probably better than anyone projected. And if you watched LSU, you might have seen that. So I'll give him credit for taking him. But yes, they are set now for a long time.
Yeah, he was my number 2 quarterback last year just because I think you had to take Caleb Williams at number 1. But to me, it was Williams and Daniels, and they were like not too far off. And then for me personally, it was Williams, Daniels, like Drake May. And May's played okay. And I think that he's got a bright
pretty
future.
Well, actually. Yeah.
But like, you know me, I have to eat my words. I was not a Bo Nix fan at all. He's proven me wrong. I bet
his over 14.5 touchdown passes this year.
JJ McCarthy does nothing for me. I don't think he's ever going to do anything for me.
And I think Chris Miller said the Vikings should look to trade him. They might. If I'm Minnesota,
right?
Yeah, if I'm Minnesota, I'm just franchise tagging Darnold and seeing if he can do it again and not trading JJ. Because look, there is value in giving these young quarterbacks time to learn and develop, and that used to be the way. Now everybody just gets thrown into the fire. So like if JJ McCarthy has to sit on the bench for 2 years and learn, that's not a bad thing. All right, let's rip New England real quick and then call it a day here. New England yesterday, I feel terrible for Gerard Mayo. I think it was a very bad look by Fox Sports to shut off Rob Gronkowski's microphone right as he was about to go in on Robert Kraft and the Patriots. Now, here's the situation. Mike Vrabel is going to be hired by the Patriots, I don't know, 48 hours from now. Like, I think that is a lock. I think they've loved Mike Vrabel for a while. Part of the rift between Tennessee Titans and Mike Vrabel was that the Tennessee Titans owners were upset that Mike Vrabel still had a close relationship with Robert Kraft. Gerard Mayo had a clause in his contract that after Belichick retired, he was, guaranteed the coach there. He was basically groomed for the job for 5 years, is given 1 season, and then canned with the new rookie franchise quarterback. I understand liking Mike Vrabel, but to do one of your own guys that dirty, I think is a horrible look. And I think there's some really bad optics to it. Underlying optics that I'm not going to say, but we all know what I'm talking about. Mike Vrabel will be hired there, but I feel like Gerard Mayo got shafted.
So I don't think Gerard Mayo did a particularly good job as their head coach this year, but I will say this. I don't think anybody was going to succeed in that capacity. I think that what Robert Kraft talked about is really kind of like a weird sticking point for me, where he talked yesterday and he goes, I feel terrible. We put Gerard Mayo in a untenable situation. Yeah. You did this. Yeah. You are the ownership group. You're the your front office put him in this spot, and you made him out to be almost the bad guy here, which listen, I don't know if Gerard Mayo is a good coach. I don't know if he's a bad coach. I don't know if he's a good person. I don't know if he's a bad person. I don't know the guy. People speak highly of him, of Gerard Mayo, the man. I don't know him personally, but you didn't give the guy much ground to stand on. It was crumbly at best. And then you kind of throw him under the bus the first chance you get. Now, I do know that Mayo threw some of his players under the bus a couple of times this year, which was not a great situation to begin with. And again, I'm not so sure he's like this world-class coach, but I just think the situation that they provided him was just dreadful. It was a lose-lose situation where
it's a rookie quarterback. No coach should be judged on 1 year of a rookie quarterback in the draft like that. And Chris Miller's in the chat saying, Mayo, they look worse from year to year. He's not the guy to lead them into the future. That's fine. But then don't, basically give this guy the clause for 4 or 5 years. Like, you wanted to protect him. You know what I mean? You gave him that clause because you didn't want to lose him, because you believe that much in him. And then you're calling it after 18 games. It stinks. I think Mike Vrabel is a good coach. He's that leader of men. So it'll probably be a decent hire for them. But man, that sucks for Gerard Mayo.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate situation. I wish that there was if you could have done it, had him fired on because the team underperformed, then I get it, right? One and done coaches happen. One and done coaches happen in the league. It's always been that way. And I don't think he did a particularly good job, didn't help himself out a ton, but there wasn't a whole lot of talent on that roster to work with. You move on from Matthew Judon, your skill position players are either young guys like a Jalen Polk or, probably at best a bunch of twos. To me, how many great players do they have on that roster? I think Christian Gonzalez is a great player. And then
that's about it.
And then
But listen to this stat. Then this is courtesy of Shield Kapadia. Drake May had a really impressive year. And so here's Shield's tweet. Among 31 qualifying rookie quarterbacks over the last 10 years, Jaden Daniels' 2024 performance ranked second in drop back success rate. Drake May's 2024 performance ranked fourth. Statistically, 2 of the more impressive rookie quarterback showings we've seen in the last decade. He had a really good year, and he's a promising player. And now Vrabel's probably going to come in, have success with him, and he'll get lauded as coach of the year and all that stuff. And Chris and Mike, your points are valid. Dave Canales, the porn freak, Bryce Young turned around. But Drake May was the bright spot of this team this year. So he gets a little bit of credit for that, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Dave Canales had his team playing hard until the end. And John and I talked about him yesterday. It was one of the few teams in the league that weren't very good this year record-wise that like could stand from winning their final week, right? Like they ended up moving back 2 spots in the draft. I think they moved from, if they would have lost, they would have picked 6th. If they won, they're picking 8th. But like you needed to continually see that progression. I think progression is a word that's getting used in the chat a lot, talking about head coaches. Dave Canales had this team progressing, right? Bryce Young gets benched. He comes back. He plays much better. It was a defense that wasn't very good. Their run defense was putrid. They're going to need to address the defensive line and the defensive front. But you have your quarterback. You have your running back. I think you have your 2 tackles between Fashanu and Equam. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. I apologize. Anyway, you have your 2 tackles, and you have your head coach. What it seems to be, Canales has done a nice job of rounding that group out. It's a team that I think is trending in the right direction. I get the point of the Patriots didn't trend in the right direction this year. They were kind of a rudderless ship for a majority of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Moton or Ekwonu?
Ekwonu. Ike Ekwonu is who I was thinking of. Excuse me.
Yeah. All right. A lot we didn't get to today. We will get to that tomorrow as Tyler and I are back in studio for the Jon Marks Show tomorrow. Looking forward to that. But Tyler, before we get out of here, why don't you thank our presenting sponsors again?
Yeah, again, we'll tell you about our friends over at Bet Parks. You play to win. You love to play. You play to win. You bet with our friends over at Bet Parks. And, of course, our friends at Central City Toyota. Go see Uncle Jamie down in Center City. He will help you with all of your financing needs. They've got great value cars under $10,000. And, of course, if you need some service done, they will pick you up. Just schedule an appointment. They'll pick you up. They'll drop you off. And they've had some incredible deals going on in a Toyota-thon. Just wrapped up. They were doing a deal that was buy 3 tires, get a 4th free. Uncle Jamie's the best. And
all Jamie's great. I mean, it's
and if you're looking for college football bets, Jamie, he's 7-1 against.
Oh, is he really?
Look at that. Yep.
These Jamies out there, I'm telling you.
Smart
By
guys.
the way, this doesn't have anything to do with Central City Toyota and Uncle Jamie, but Jan from Toyotathon caught her last night on the I believe it was the FCS division. What's the North Dakota State
FCS.
FCS.
Yeah.
Jan came on. She's aging like a fine wine, Tyler. Jan is getting hotter as she gets older. Nice work, Jan.
Did you see real quick? I'm sorry, I know we're way out.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
The end of the FCS championship game last night.
I didn't see the end. I watched it until like the second half early.
North Dakota State jumped out to a huge lead and ended up being a really good game. I'm almost sorry I watched the Sixers instead of that game.
I know. I watched the Sixers. I hated myself.
It ended up being a really good football game. So North Dakota State lines up with like very little time left on the clock. They're up by 3, I believe. I think it's 35-32. They punt, and the punt just doesn't get fielded. Like they just let the clock run out. North Dakota State just surrounds it, downs it. The clock ends and it was over. And that's how the FCS championship ended.
That's weird.
And North Dakota State, and Montana State, by the way, was 15-0 heading into that game. North Dakota State wins the FCS championship again because they're just a powerhouse. And I was thinking about it the other day. I'm like, why do they not go to the FBS level? And it's like, well, they could be decent at the FBS level, or they could be elite at the FCS level. And I think that's why they stay.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll resume all the stuff we didn't get to tomorrow. But to everybody in the chat, hit that thumbs up button before you get out of here. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. We love and appreciate everybody hanging out with us. The Anthony Gargano show is happening right now, so you can just hop over to that channel next. Tyler, good time as always. To everybody in the chat, have a great Tuesday, and we'll see you on Wednesday here on the Jon Marks Show.